In history, blacks were always in trouble and treated badly, but did you know there are some chapters where white women also have dark secrets? Today we will discuss the disgusting sex lives of white plantation mistresses in slavery. Plantation mistresses occupied a unique and paradoxical position within the hierarchical structure of the antebellum South. While ostensibly expected to conform to the ideals of feminine virtue and modesty, they held significant power and frequently exploited their authority over enslaved individuals for sexual purposes. These mistresses, often married to plantation owners or overseers, had substantial control over the enslaved workforce. They wielded authority not only in domestic matters but also in the broader management of the plantation, overseeing labor, discipline, and daily routines. With this power came the ability to coerce and manipulate enslaved individuals into performing sexual acts, fulfilling their own desires, and gratifying their lustful fantasies. How did the plantations of the antebellum South conceal a web of secrets where power imbalances and moral contradictions defined the lives of mistresses and enslaved individuals alike? Were their intimate relationships, exploitation, and the tragic fates of mixed-race children merely symptoms of an oppressive system, or do they reveal a deeper, more unsettling truth about the society they inhabited? The exploitation of enslaved individuals for sexual purposes was a horrific aspect of plantation life. Mistresses, though positioned as the guardians of moral and social values, engaged in acts that violated the very principles they were expected to uphold. This behavior further underscored the inherent hypocrisy and cruelty of the institution of slavery. Female slaves in the antebellum South endured a life filled with unspeakable hardships and brutal treatment. Among the various forms of abuse, the transcript highlights two particularly distressing aspects: floggings and exposure to the sun. Floggings were a grim reality of daily life for enslaved women. Even minor infractions or perceived disobedience could lead to severe physical punishment. These whippings, often administered with cruelty, left not just physical scars but also emotional and psychological wounds that would last a lifetime. The lash of the overseer's whip served as a constant reminder of their subjugation. Exposure to the sun added another layer of suffering. Female slaves were forced to endure long hours of labor in the fields, often under the scorching southern sun. They toiled tirelessly, subjected to grueling conditions without respite. This cruel exposure to the elements took a toll on their physical health and well-being, leading to exhaustion, sunburns, and heat-related illnesses. These experiences exemplify the profound injustice and cruelty embedded in the institution of slavery. Female slaves, already deprived of their freedom and basic human rights, were subjected to physical and emotional torment on a daily basis. Their resilience in the face of such adversity stands as a testament to their strength and determination in the pursuit of freedom and dignity. Intimate relationships between plantation mistresses and enslaved individuals were indeed a dark and complex facet of antebellum Southern society. While less common than extramarital affairs between white male plantation owners and enslaved women, these relationships did occur, revealing the intricate dynamics of power and exploitation within the institution of slavery. The transcript suggests that these relationships were not driven solely by romantic affection, but often stem from a combination of factors. Loneliness and frustration were common among mistresses, especially when their husbands were frequently absent, and they turned to enslaved individuals as a means of gratifying their desires. In some cases, these relationships were born out of sheer boredom or a desire to exert control in an area of their lives where they felt powerless. These relationships serve as a chilling reminder of the warped morality and power imbalances that define the institution of slavery. They reveal the extent to which the enslaved were seen as property, even in matters of intimacy, and how the oppressive system allowed for the exploitation of individuals in the most personal and degrading ways. How did enslaved individuals employ animal skin condoms and other rudimentary means to exert control over their reproductive destinies? What drove enslaved women to seek ways to delay or prevent pregnancies, knowing the dire fate their children faced? Stay tuned to know the answer. In the bleak landscape of antebellum slavery, where the most fundamental rights and choices were denied to enslaved individuals, the use of contraceptive methods emerges as a paradoxical aspect. The transcript mentions the commonality of contraceptive methods like animal skin condoms, offering a glimpse into how enslaved individuals attempted to exercise a modicum of control over their reproductive destinies in a world marked by extreme oppression. These makeshift contraceptive methods, though rudimentary by today's standards, represented a form of resistance against the brutal consequences of forced pregnancies and the potential for their offspring to be born into a life of bondage. Enslaved women, aware of the dire circumstances and the potential for their children to inherit the same fate, sought ways to delay or prevent pregnancy. The use of animal skin condoms, oiled silk, and rubber for contraception, while limited in efficacy, speaks to the resilience and resourcefulness of enslaved individuals. It demonstrates their determination to exert agency, even in the most intimate aspects of their lives, striving to mitigate the terrible prospects that awaited their children in a society built upon racial exploitation. This revelation offers a poignant insight into the lived experiences of those who were oppressed and exploited in unimaginable ways. It underscores the desperate measures they took to exert some semblance of control over their destinies and protect their progeny from a life marked by the horrors of slavery. The revelation that mistresses often turned to enslaved individuals to satisfy their sexual desires sheds light on the deeply complex and disturbing dynamics of the antebellum South. Loneliness and frustration were pervasive in the lives of plantation mistresses, who, while occupying positions of relative privilege, found themselves in a uniquely oppressive societal structure. Loneliness plagued these women, particularly when their husbands were frequently absent, often traveling for various reasons. In these periods of solitude, they grappled with isolation and an overwhelming sense of boredom. This loneliness, combined with the lack of agency in other areas of their lives, drove some mistresses to seek companionship among the enslaved population. The power imbalance within these relationships was stark. Mistresses wielded authority over the very individuals they sought solace with, making any consent given by the enslaved individuals highly questionable due to the inherently coercive nature of slavery. It was a chilling manifestation of the twisted and dehumanizing nature of the institution. These relationships were, in essence, a tragic consequence of the oppressive society in which they existed. They illustrate the extent to which individuals trapped within this system could be driven to seek fleeting moments of connection, even at the cost of further exploiting those who were already subjugated. Ultimately, they highlight the pervasive moral degradation and loss of empathy within a society that systematically dehumanized and devalued certain segments of its population. The complex and troubling dynamics of intimate relationships between mistresses and enslaved individuals often resulted in the birth of children of mixed race. These children found themselves at the intersection of two deeply unequal worlds, subject to a range of fates dictated by the oppressive system of antebellum slavery. In some instances, the birth of mixed-race children led to infanticide, a horrifying outcome that reflected the extent to which the societal norms of the time were predicated on racial hierarchies and dehumanization. Mistresses, driven by the fear of scandal or the desire to maintain the appearance of racial purity, would sometimes resort to killing their own offspring, an act that defies comprehension but underscores the moral degradation of the era. Despite their mixed ancestry, these children were frequently sold into slavery and forced to endure lives of bondage and service. Another option was for these youngsters to be enslaved. Their futures were determined by a system that did not recognize their humanity and did not grant them the privileges and opportunities that their white counterparts were afforded. This prevented them from achieving their full potential. These children of mixed racial heritage were raised in a society that did not accept them completely and did not treat them with the freedom and respect that should have been their inheritance. Instead, they were held in a painful limbo. The plight of these youngsters is illustrative of the heartbreaking results that might arise from the operation of an institution that was founded on the practice of racial oppression. It highlights the pervasive dehumanization and cruelty that characterized slavery in the antebellum era, a time when even the innocent lives of children were vulnerable to the heartless whims of those who held power. During this time, the United States was still a slave-holding nation. In the antebellum South, mistresses had a contradictory role in the lives of their masters. In spite of the fact that they frequently held positions of relative power and authority inside their households, slaveholders in the South preserved and helped perpetuate the deeply ingrained racial hierarchies and economic inequities that characterized the institution of slavery in their region. By exercising control over and taking advantage of their enslaved workers, mistresses played an important role in maintaining racial segregation. They took part in the dehumanization of these people by perceiving them primarily in the context of their value as property rather than as fellow members of the human race. Their participation in activities such as sexual exploitation, severe discipline, and the sale of those held as slaves contributed to the racialized violence that was inherent to the institution.